sa anak sa Dios sa balaang Espiritu Santo. Amahan namo nga anak ka sa mga langit, pagabalaan namo ang imong ngalan, paanhia ang imong kingharian, pagabuhaton unta namo ang imong kabubot-on dinhi sa yuta mayingon man ngadto sa langit. O hatagi kami karon sa pagkaon namo sa matag adlaw, o pasayloa kami sa among mga utang, maingon nga kami nakapasaylo man sa mga nagkautang diha kanamo. O ayaw kami itugyan ngadto sa mga panulay, hinunoa ilikay mo kami gikan sa mga kadautan, kay imo man ang gingharian, ang gahom ug ang himaya hangtod sa kahangturan. Bathala ala Ja Yavasua Yahweh Adonai Elohim Yeshua Apo Asug Apo Bagulang Apo Gumulang Apo Uha Apo Uha Apo Uha Apo Aha God Lord Havang Dios Jesus Christ Señor Jesus Emmanuel Santo Papa Menestro Paulino Onggoy Z Agapay Yavasua Yeshua Elohim sa ngalan sa Amahan, sa Inahan, sa Anak, sa Dios, sa Balaang Espiritu Santo. Amen.
Okay, Luzon, Visayas ug Mindanao kaninyong tanan. Kutob sa maabot niining programa sa ang pinili nga nasud giluwas ug gipahiuli. Maayong gabi kaninyong tanan mga kaigsuonan. Unya, mapasalamaton kay tagdako sa atong labaw nga magahom nga diin sa kanunay sa matag Sabado ug Domingo ani kita dire aron sa pagmensahe sa pulong sa Dios apan sa dili pa mga kaigsuonan kaniadto sa nasod sa Israel si Ginoong Hesukristo ang iyang bugtong anak nga iyang gipadala nganhi sa kalibutan tungod sa iyang dakong gugmangan hikanato apan sa pagpasiguro na Isaias 43 bersikulo 10 si Ginoong Hesukristo do na nay bag-ong ngalan mga kaigsuonan. Isaias 62 bersikulo 2 ang amahan mismo mo'y nagdeklara nga siya do nay bag-ong ngalan. Unya sa pinadayag 3:12 si Ginoong Hesukristo mismo kaigsuonan nagclaim pud siya nga siya adunay usa ka bag-ong ngalan mga kaigsuonan. Unya gipamatud ani sa balaang espiritu Juan 15 bersikulo 26 ngadto sa 27 ingon nga kami mo isaksi niini mga kaigsuonan among gipaila diha kaninyo nga ang pag-ungalan ni Ginoong Hesukristo halangdong Santo Papa Menestro Paulino Onggoy Z Agapay mga kaigsuonan. Ani ana usab ang programa sa ang pinili nga nasud giluwas ug ipahiuli panggobyerno sa Dios nga nagsugod na sa Pagmando or God's government begins its rule nga ang katuyoan niini mga kaigsuonan mao ang kalinaw ug kausay ingon nga mao'y lagda sa tanang mga iglesia sa mga balaan. Atong itunol ang atong pagtimbaya sa atong mga personnel ning atong istasyon sa atong station manager kay Sir Dennis Garay ingon man sa atong master control si Sir Pegaredo ug usab kauban sa buhat si Sir Dunyo sa inyong tanan maayong pagpaminaw. Nya, kumusta mga kaigsuonan kaganina sa Calamba, Misamis Occidental nakapaminaw mo dito 98.6 DXMM FM sa dial sa inyong mga radyo. Kada Domingo ni siya mga kaigsuonan alas 11 hangtod alas 12 ang takna sa udto. Doon na ni siya gihimo diha nga pa-premyo pod mga igsuon usa ka tawo ang iyang gikinahanglan bawat programa o nya 1,000 pesos ang kantidad sa iyang pa-premyo jackpot mga kaigsuonan. Unya dili lang kay diha lang usab sa Ipil Sibugay Sambusor 103.1 FM sa dial sa inyong mga radyo. Unya ang oras nini alauna hangtod alas 2 sa hapon mga igsoon. Do na lang gihapon ni siya ginagmay nga pa-premyo ang ginahimo, tulo ka tawo ang iyahang kuhaon. Unya ang naka-angkor niini mao si Brother Junior Supuso. Usab sa RMN DXDR naka-hook up kini sa DYRB Cebu o sa DXDR Pagadian DXPR Pagadian City. Unya sa FM 94.1 unya sa FM sa AM mga kaigsuonan 98.1 then sa FM 94.1 ang oras nini 5:30 to 7 evening kaganihan ni mga kaigsuonan hinaot naka-apil pod mo dito sa ilahang ginagmay nga pa-premyo. Doon ay jackpot prize nga ginahimo 1,000 ang kantidad usa ka tawo lang ang kuhaon and then kung dili mo masulod sa 1,000 kay usa ra man ka tawo ang ihang kuhaon doon ay tinag 500 nga gasunod mga kaigsuonan 5 ka tawo ang ihang ginakuha. Hinaot sa matag programa sa kada Domingo mga kaigsuonan makasunod pud mo diha yawat na lang pod makaabil mo sa ginagmay nga pa-premyo sa pinili nga nasud giluwas ug ipahiuli. Then ato pong pagtimbaya diha sa gawas sa atong mga kaigsuonan dinha sa Poland kay Nieves Aros o kay Mina Balawag sa New York And then kay Sister Eva Agapay sa Bahrain, kay Teresita Roda sa Canada, nabasa na ko ang imong mensahe kaganinha, salamat kaayo. Then kay Mercy Anyag sa Florida, USA, then kay Merlan Akama sa United Kingdom, kumusta na mo diha, amping mo kanunay, salamat sa inyong makanunayon nga pagsunod ning atong programa mga kaigsuunan. Ug usab sa atong mga kaigsuunan diha sa atong mga followers dinha sa Dapitan, sa Cagayan, sa Pulangco, sa Negros, usab mga kaigsunan diha sa Sipalok, then sa Sikayab, sa Upper Sikayab, Lower Sikayab, ug usab diha sa Punot, and then sa Ulingan pod, sa Dikaya, sa Minawog, sa tanan natong mga kaigsunan nga nagsubaybay kanunay sa atong programa kaninyong tanan maayong pagpaminaw. Usab po diha sa Luzon mga kaigsunan, sa mga kapatid po natin diyan, sa inyo pong lahat, sa walang sawa ninyong pagsubaybay sa ating programa every Saturday and Sunday, sa inyo pong lahat, labi na kay Rakil Anyag uban ang ihang pamilya, ug usab kay Jamaica Anyag, sa inyong tanan diha maayong pagpaminaw ug maayong gabi sa inyong tanan. Sa mga naka-tune in sa ilahang radio 105.3 AM band, sa mga nag-monitor na to sa internet, live ta sa Facebook ug sa YouTube, i-type lang ug i-click ang RPN DXKD Dipolog City. Usab pod kay Queen Arzel Bilais nagpaminaw pod usab ni kanato kanunay, maayong pagpaminaw usab pod nimo diha Queen. Then ang pulong sa Ginoo nag-ingon sa Santiago 1:19, kinahanglan ang matag usa ka tawo magmaabtik sa pagpamati. Sa ngalan na lang sa kinatibuk ang puwersa sa ang pinili nga nasud giluwas ug ipahiuli sa among inahan sa iglesia, kay Mamaliling Agapay, kaninyong tanan ug kanatong tanan, maayong gabi. And now we have here our first speaker, Brother George.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
sister.
you may now take your time.
Good evening, everybody, and please, before I begin, drive carefully and safely. If you don't drive, tell your driver to drive safely and carefully. Stay healthy, but most of all, may God bless you all. This evening, I'm going to talk about Santo Papa. For one thing, I'm going to talk about the ancient Israelites first. I'm going to talk about Santo Papa when he was Jesus, and Santo Papa when he was here as a Subanon Filipino. I found a reference to Santo Papa in the prophet Isaiah. It's stuck right in the middle. It looks as if it makes no sense unless you are a member of the chosen nation. Very short, very sweet. It says the following: He lifts up a banner for the distant nations. He whistles for those at the ends of the earth. Here they come, swiftly and speedily. Not one of them grows tired or stumbles, not one slumbers or sleeps. Not a belt is loosened at the waist, not a sandal strap is broken. This is right in the middle of Isaiah, and it bears no relationship to what comes before or afterwards. What is interesting to me is that Isaiah talks about distant nations and the ends of the earth. This is something that a prophet of the Israelites would never say unless they were talking about a completely different country than Israel. The Israelites really only talked about Israel and those countries bordering Israel, which they were fighting: the Hittites, the Philistines, the Amalekites, the Canaanites, the Middle East, basically, possibly the Arabians. But distant nations and the ends of the earth? No, they were not interested in this. What is this? He lifts up a banner for the distant nation. He, who is he? I think it's Santo Papa. It doesn't say that. It doesn't need to say that. It doesn't say this is the Son of God or the Messiah. He. But this is right in the middle of Isaiah. Isaiah is not used to talking. Isaiah was a prophet who talked very specifically about certain facts. What is a prophet? A prophet is somebody who prophesies. What is to prophesy? To prophesy means to say something which God tells you will happen in the future. This will happen. Clearly, Isaiah would never have written this unless this would happen in the future. He lifts up a banner for the distant nations. He whistles for those at the ends of the earth. Apparently, whistling had a lot to do with Santo Papa's early life. The Subanon use whistling. I've heard this. Very interesting. Whistles. No Israelite whistled. It's just not something they did. They had a horn to summon people to the temple, but nobody whistled. Very interesting. Now, I just noticed that. There are, in my opinion, 3 stages of faith regarding God, the one and only living God. I don't know about idols. I don't know about people who worship idols in other countries. But for us, for Jewish people, Christian people alike, there is the one and only living God. Now, let's talk about sinning. Adam and Eve, they sinned. They disobeyed God. How do Israelites, and today Jews, same thing, they haven't changed, deal with sinning? How do Christians deal with sinning? Very differently. Very differently. And I'm going to read a little from Deuteronomy. God is speaking to the Israelites because the Israelites, many of them, had gone back to worshipping idols. They started off with Abraham worshipping the one and only living God, then many of them, for whatever reason, went back to worshipping the golden calf and Baal and all kinds of idols. God says to them, now, what, and this is, yes, chapter 30, Deuteronomy, verse 11. Now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. It is not up in heaven, so that you have to ask who will ascend, who will go up to heaven to get it and proclaim it to us so we may obey it. Nor is it beyond the sea, so that you have to ask who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so we may obey it. God has an interesting sense of humor. No, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart, so you may obey it. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, but also death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. Then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. The ancient Israelites and the modern Israelis and all Jewish sects regarding sinning, the following. If you are a Jewish person, in the old days Israelite person, and you are religious and you sin, there are a couple of things you need to do. Firstly, you have to realize that you sin. Secondly, you need to accept this fact. Thirdly, you need to ask God for forgiveness. And then most importantly, you must change your behavior and stop sinning and do good things to counteract your sins, like giving money to the poor people or honoring your father and mother more and more. And this is still today. Christianity is very, very different. And 2,000 years ago, Jesus and later St. Paul talked about the law, meaning the Torah, which is here. Deuteronomy, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, is called the Torah in Hebrew, which means the law, which God gave to Moses and Moses gave to the Israelite people. various laws, not just one. The 10 Commandments are the most famous. Jesus said, and St. Paul said, you don't need to bother about that. Just listen to me. Because, as happened, Jesus, very importantly, was tortured by the Romans. Of course, unbelievable pain. He was nailed to a cross and died. Why? To absolve mankind from his sins. This is what God the Father wanted. Sacrifice. He sacrificed his one and only Son. He said this many times. Jesus said this, God the Father said this, hoping that we will stop sinning, because until then we were sinning. Not just the Israelites, but everybody. In the old days, even before God spoke to Abraham, if you wanted something from your idols, and there were many, you took a lamb, went to the temple, cut its throat, drew off the blood, said a little prayer and say, oh please, Baal or whatever God you were praying to, give me rain, give me money, whatever. It's called a sacrifice. Jesus being tortured and dying on the cross was the ultimate sacrifice, the Son of God, as sacrifice that mankind would stop sinning. Well, did we stop sinning? Let's look at the last 2,000 years. And this is a terrible thing, and I'm probably going to get a lot of bad press. But Christianity, more people have been killed in wars waged by Christians than any other religion. Even if you talk about the Muslims, far more. The 30 years war waged between the years 1618 and 1648 between Catholics and Protestants, 20 million people were killed. Men, women and children. At least 20 million, a third of all of Germany. The Inquisition, the Crusades, the wars of the Papal States, which the Pope wanted more of Italy, he took it. Okay. Now, I'm not judging, I'm giving you facts. These are cold, hard, historical facts regarding Christianity. Question. What do you think God thinks of this? This is just a question. I'm not God, but I ask the question. I've asked God this question. What do you think God thinks of these wars? Is this why Jesus was tortured and crucified and died on the cross as a sacrifice for our sins? Okay. Let's move forward to about, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, whenever Santo Papa, this amazing man, Santo Papa Paulino Agapai, was born. Never said he was the Son of God. Never said he was the Messiah, which means King of the Israelite people. He's a Filipino. Subanon. Was he crucified? How did he die? Was he tortured by the Spanish or by anybody? No, they weren't even here. He lived a happy, healthy, long life, died naturally, and he was married and he had children. I've met his son. Wonderful man. I've met his widow. Wonderful woman, amazing. Now, I never met Santo Papa, so I cannot talk to him and ask him questions, but I know certain facts. The fact that when Jesus came a second time as Santo Papa, that he was not sacrificed, crucified, murdered, whatever you were, that he lived a happy, healthy, long life means something. There is a message here from God the Father, because when he came the first time, obviously this didn't work. The sacrifice didn't work. We still sinned. Santo Papa talked about one thing a lot: God's government. What is a government? It is a body in charge of something. Jesus talked about the kingdom of heaven. Santo Papa talked about God's government here on earth. Big difference. Very interesting. Now, the fact that Santo Papa was married and had children, was not killed, lived as a human being, but was the Son of God, although he never said so. This says something to me. Obviously, God wanted his Son to return in a different way. And then the church, the chosen nation. Santo Papa established this little sect, the chosen nation. Firstly, the name means something to me. The ancient Israelites still call themselves the chosen people. What does this mean? Who chose them? Answer, God. God spoke to Abraham and said, take your family and friends, and I will lead you to the promised land. I promise that I will give you this land because you are the chosen people, chosen by me to be the first people to acknowledge that there is a living God, one God, no idols, because in those days all countries practiced idolatry. Even in Abraham's country, in his city of Ur, there were 2,000 gods, lots of little wooden idols in people's living rooms, and they prayed to them. God appeared to Abraham and said, no, I am the one and only living God, just as he said to David, who fought Goliath. Very important, living. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Jesus in this regard. I read most of the four Gospels, and maybe I missed it. I could not find anywhere where Jesus says, I am the Son of God. But at least 17 times he said, I am the Son of Man, emphasizing it. His mother was an earth woman. He wanted everyone to know, I am from the planet Earth. I eat, I get hungry, I have to wear clothes, I need to sleep. I'm a man. Okay. A man feels pain, tremendous pain, when he was sacrificed. This is the whole point. Compare this to his second coming. Santo Papa, no crucifixion. When I first went to the church in Baja, where he lived, and his son and family still live, his widow and brother still lives in this little house in Baja, I was astonished, because I was baptized Catholic when I was 2 weeks old. I didn't even know what it was. I was dipped in like a little bath and baptized. Then I went to Protestant schools, Church of England schools, because my mother in England could not afford Catholic schools, which were private. So I know Catholicism and Church of England a lot, Christian. Every church I've been to in my life, there is at least one cross, a big one, wooden cross, brown, over the altar with a body on it, the body of Jesus, at least the image. Thou shalt make no graven images of me. That's one of the commandments. I think to myself, what the heck, what's going on here? And in a particular sect, not going to go, no names, not only that, you walk in, you see big, tall, 6 foot high idols of Mary, the mother of Jesus, Joseph, the stepfather, God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and lots of saints. pictures, and people praying on their knees, kissing the feet of these idols. Question, what does God think of this? In Bara, not one cross. Now, Christians, at least in the countries there where I've lived, England, and especially the United States, women, female Christians, wear crosses around their neck to proclaim, oh, I'm Christian. A little cross, very often of gold if they can afford it, otherwise stainless steel, with a little body on it, even. Idolatry. No? I think so. Isn't this a graven... I mean, you tell me. Isn't this an idol? Around their neck? In Bara, I went to Bara the first time. I saw 40 women at least. I counted them sitting on the floor. No chairs, no tables. Very nice, very innocent, looking at me, pure hearts. Not one cross around anybody's neck. Not one cross in the whole room. No pictures of saints. No idols of anybody in Jesus' family, or even him. I mean, you could have a big idol of Santa Papa. No. No windows. No stained glass, because there are no windows. There's a big hole in the wall. Simple. And it reminded me, I remember thinking, my goodness, the house of Joseph, Jesus' stepfather 2,000 years ago, probably looked exactly like this, where Jesus had the Last Supper. There was a long table so that they could eat, but otherwise no furniture. After dinner they sat on the floor and either prayed or talked about God. Just like Bara. And of course there were no crosses or anything else. Simple. Secondly, God created the universe in 6 days. On the 7th day, he rested and wants us to rest. Very Orthodox Christian, Jewish people don't work at all on the 7th day. What is the 7th day? Is it Sunday? I think that's the first day of the week. 7th day is Saturday. Bara, chosen nation, celebrates and worships God on the Sabbath, what's called the Sabbath in Hebrew. The 7th day of the week is Saturday, when God rested, not Sunday. Every other Christian church that I know of, certainly the ones I went to, the Roman Catholic, Protestant, Methodist, Pentecostal, whatever, they celebrate as a day of worship Sunday, the first day of the week. Why? There's a whole story about paganism and the Romans, but the point is that the chosen nation worships on Saturdays, and they are chosen, just like the ancient Israelites, chosen by God to spread his word of God's government. It does not mean that members of the chosen nation think they are better than everybody else, just as the ancient Israelites did not think they were better than anybody else because they were the chosen people. If a people is chosen by God, it means one of two things. With the ancient Israelites, it meant chosen to be the first nation which accepts and acknowledges that there is one living God. The chosen nation here in the Philippines, we celebrate the fact, accept the fact that Jesus came a second time. A man called, his different name, Santo Papa Paulino Agapay, and our Lord God the Father chose us to follow him. That's all. Nobody thinks they're better than anybody else. Now, sinning. I've been over what the ancient Israelites and the modern Jewish people think of sinning, the stages. The Christians believe that Jesus died on the cross, was tortured and so forth, to absolve us from our sins. The problem is that many Christians think, Jesus died for my sins, so I can sin tomorrow. I'm going to be forgiven automatically by God because Jesus already absolved me from my sins. This was a sacrifice. I already made the sacrifice because I go to church every Sunday. Ooh, I don't know what God thinks of that. In the chosen nation, as far as I know, and I'm a new member, we don't believe in that. Well, it's not a question of belief, it's acknowledgement. We acknowledge, just like the ancient Israelites, if we sin, firstly, we need to acknowledge that we sin. Secondly, we ask God, beg God even, for forgiveness, and then change our ways. Santo Papa was not a sacrifice. Very important. So, it's like a circle. First we have the ancient Israelites, the first monotheists, the first people who God came to and said, I'm the one and only living God. Then Jesus. And thirdly, Santo Papa, with the chosen nation, God's governance. And for me at least, and this is now just my opinion, it may or may not be fact. Again, I've only been here 2 years and 3 months. It's like a circle. The chosen nation reminds me far more of the ancient Israelites than modern Christians. No idols, no crosses. I was on another radio station earlier. When I came home, I spoke to my wife about crosses. I said, look, what in the United States, in Europe, in England, Christians very often wear, especially women, they wear a nice cross, sometimes diamond, expensive. Why don't women or men in the chosen nation wear crosses? She said something very human. Why should we? It's a terrible thing, the crucifixion. We don't want to be reminded of this. That was 2,000 years ago. Jesus returned. He came back as Santo Papa. This is a wonderful thing. Santo Papa's life was a happy life. He died happily, naturally. No cross. Santo Papa was not crucified. So of course, we are not going to celebrate Jesus' death. We are going to celebrate Santo Papa's life. Very wise, very interesting. Sinning. I wanted to read that. We all know about Adam and Eve, and I could go on and on about their sins, original sin.
Excuse me, Brother George. Before that, let us give the question.
Sorry?
Let us give the question.
A question, yes.
Okay. Kay mga kaigsunan, kung nakatusunod mo sa kapitulo ug bersikulo nga iyang gibuhian, gamay lang ka ito mga kaigsunan, hinaot, wa mo ato malimot, kining pulong nga, asa ka nato ni pwede makaplagi sa Biblia. Ningon ang maong pulong, kay kining sugua nga ginasugo ko kanimo niining adlawa, dili kini makuli kanimo, dili usab halayo, wala kini sa langit, aron magaingon ka, kinsa ba ang musaka alang kanato sa langit, og magadala niini dinhi kanato, og magapatalinghog kanato niini, aron nga atong pagatumanon kini, og wala kini sa tabok sa dagat, aron nga magaingon ka, kinsa ba ang mutabok alang kanato sa dagat, og magadala niini dinhi kanato, og magapatalinghog niini kanato, aron atong pagatumanon. I-send lang ang iyong tubag sa 0946-249-5249 nang inahanglan mig tulo ka tawo. Okay, back to you, Brother George.
I would like to talk about original sin. We all know about Adam and Eve and the fruit of the forbidden tree. And I don't know if I've said this previously, but Adam and Eve committed various sins, not just one, which was disobedience to God. God said, please do not eat from that. There are thousands of trees, eat from any one, just not from that particular tree in the center of the Garden of Eden, the tree of good and evil. But they did. Okay. But there's something else. When Satan appeared to Eve, how did he persuade her to eat from the tree? He said, God does not want you to eat from this tree, because if you eat from the tree, you will be God. You will be like him. And so she ate. That is a terrible sin. That is the sin that Satan himself committed in heaven. He wanted to be not just like God, but he wanted to be the boss of heaven. And Eve wanted to be like God. Sin. So she offered it to Adam, who, strangely enough, just ate it without even thinking. With Adam, there's something even worse happened. Really, the worst sin I can think of. God obviously saw what was happening here. Came to Adam and said, what have you done? Why did you disobey me? Do you know what Adam said? Instead of getting on his knees and begging God for forgiveness, he did not even acknowledge that he sinned. All he said was, the woman who you created guided me to the wrong path, to evil. The woman whom you created, if you had not created her, this would never have happened. He blamed God. How can you blame God for your own sin? The woman who you created persuaded me or forced me, whatever. She didn't. She just held it in front of his face. She didn't get a gun or a knife and said, eat it or I kill you. No. But to blame God for your own sin, this to me, he must have gone straight to hell. What a family. Then they had Cain, their first son. What did he do? He murdered his own brother. Amazing. So, after a while, God lost patience with mankind. And this is Genesis chapter 6, verse 6. And this is very bad, but then very good. Let's do the bad news first. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. I was 4 years old when this was read to me by a teacher I went to a religious school in England. I cried. I couldn't stop crying. I felt so bad for God. Depressed. I mean, the whole purpose of creating the universe was mankind. The sun, the moon, the stars, everything, the animals, and at the pinnacle, at the top, people, mankind. And what did mankind do? He couldn't even do the simplest thing, obey God. And then the son murders his own brother. And the husband blames God for his own sin. I mean, my God, amazing. The teacher said to me, wait, let me read the next sentence. The next sentence begins with my favorite word in the English language, but. So God had said, I'm going to destroy the earth. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So I thought to myself, at last we have, apart from Abel, a good human being, not an evil or wicked one. Now, there were several, not many, good human beings mentioned in the Old and New Testaments. In the Old Testament, their actions are described in great detail. Noah, we know about his ship or boat. God did what he said he would do. He destroyed most of the earth with a flood. And we know Noah was saved. He took 2 of each species, his family, and so forth. God even sent angels to marry human women. Male angels, he gave them male bodies. This is also chapter 6. I'll read. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. These angels, and these look like angels, the sons of God. God speaks to us. Don't forget something. God is pure spirit. He's not human. So it's not like we have a son like you have a son here on earth. You get married, you make love, you have a son or a daughter. No. God doesn't have a wife. He's pure spirit. Out of his spirit the angels were created. These were like angels, these were spirits. But he talks about the sons of God so that we would understand. Why did God permit this? And this was just before the flood, by the way. The idea was this. These angels saw these beautiful women. There were no women in heaven. Married them. God said, okay, I'm going to give you male bodies. You marry the women. But what I want you to do is at the dinner table and generally talk about me. Spread my word to your family, to your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Maybe I can inject a little bit of purity into the human race, because the human race, as he said later, is wicked and evil, follows Satan and so forth. This produced, and this is my opinion, a line of very special people over generations, not just then. People like Job and David and Solomon. These were people who did not sin. And I can go into each person's life. In the Old Testament, God talks about two things, basically. How the Israelites turned away from him and sinned, and how some of them did not, but followed him and not Satan. We have a choice. God gave us a great gift. It's called free will. Very important. In the book of Job, there is a conversation which Job is unaware of. Conversation in cyberspace, if you like. Neither heaven nor hell. Conversation between Satan and God. God says to Satan, look, have you met my faithful servant Job? Now when you say something like this to Satan, it's like a huge temptation, because what does Satan want? Satan wants to turn mankind away from God, like Eve, for example, successfully. So Satan said to God, oh, really? Faithful servant today? He's going to worship me tomorrow. Let me take everything away from him. I see that he is very wealthy. He has hectares and hectares of land, camels, horses, cows, tremendous wealth, gold, silver, a beautiful wife, beautiful children. Let me take everything away from him, and we'll see if he still worships you. I think he will curse you. God said, go ahead. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because of sinning. Question, will Job sin? Will Job say, I curse God, I hate God? Definitely a sin. I hate God because he's taken everything away from me. Okay. Satan took everything away. What did Job do? What did he not do? He did not curse God. He still praised God. God summoned Satan. Satan does whatever God tells him, by the way. Although he's the second most powerful entity in the universe, God created him. He was called Lucifer in heaven, which means made of light, number one angel. He thought that he was better than God, so God said, fine, I'm going to create a special place for you where you will be the boss. Hell. Okay, that's Satan's story in a nutshell. So, God summoned Satan a second time and said, have you met my servant Job? Satan said, yes, unfortunately, didn't work out. But, he said to God, let me attack his body. Give him terrible pain, disease, cuts, boils, leprosy, everything I can think of to cause him personal pain in his human body. He's a human being. Humans are mine. They are wicked. They are evil. Even you have said this. God said, not all. Just two words, not all. Not all humans. Look at Noah. Look at Abel. Satan said, I don't want to look at them. I want to look at Job. Fine. God said, attack his body, but do not kill him. Satan said, of course not. There's no point in killing him before he curses you. So, Satan did this. Job even said, I wish I had never been born. But he never cursed God. His own wife went to him at one point and said, Job, you're in such pain and you're an old man. You're going to die anyway of something, leprosy, I don't know what you have, some disease. You're in such pain. Curse God and die. 4 very famous words in the Old Testament. Curse God and die. Meaning, if you curse God, you'll be happy and just die because he's going to kill you anyway. Job said one of the wisest things I can think of. And this is something for everybody today. He said life is like a hill and a valley. Sure, I had a wonderful life. I had lots of gold, silver, cows, land. But sometimes life is a little inconvenient. His wife said, inconvenient? Uncomfortable? Come on. Job said, okay. Sometimes life is painful. But this has nothing to do with God. I will always love God and be faithful to him, whether life is good or painful. Wife walked away, she didn't know what to say. Job said a short prayer, worshipped God, accepted him as the one and only living God. Satan shook his head, couldn't believe it. This obviously was not Eve or Adam. He says nothing else. One can only think of any conversation between God and Satan. I don't think God needed to say anything else. Satan just left and went back to hell. What happened? Immediately, that second, God healed Job. No more disease, no more pain, immediately. And he gave him 10 times more than he possessed in the first place. More land, cows, camels, horses, gold, silver, whatever. He was the wealthiest person in the whole country and lived a long, happy, healthy life full of energy and strength. Now, I am one of those people who are convinced that all of both testaments are true. This is not fiction. This is not just a story. Back then, and Job was written, I think, around 3,000 years ago, writers did not have free time to write fiction. After all, where did this come from, this story? Who could possibly invent such a story? This is a recounting of something that actually happened. Now, and I want to be optimistic and positive. I've been very negative when God said, I regret that I made human beings. You cannot become more negative than that. When Adam blamed God for creating Eve instead of begging for God's forgiveness for his own sins, that's unbelievably sinful and negative. But, I love that word, but, Abel, Noah, Job. Let's go to David. King Saul, who was first king of the Israelites, and this occurred about 3,200 years ago, sinned. Same as Eve, he disobeyed God. God had anointed him as king of Israel. Okay. He was nothing. His family were not aristocrats. They were not special people. But God thought, this is a strong man. He can lead the Israelites. So, first war. And the Israelites are always at war. This time with the Amalekites in the north. God said to Saul, I'm going to help you defeat these people, although they have twice as many men as you. Go, fight the Amalekites. You will find that you will win. Now, I want you to kill all of them. This is not cruelty on the part of God, by the way. It's a test of Saul's obedience. I want you to kill all of them and leave whatever they possess right there on the battlefield. Don't take it. Saul did not obey. He went, he defeated the Amalekites, but he took prisoners. And he took booty, meaning he took whatever possessions they had. He went to their camp, he took gold, silver, horses, camels. God was displeased. He said, you are no longer king of the Israelites. So, who became anointed? One day, the Israelites had to fight a different tribe called the Philistines. The Philistines lived in what is now the Gaza Strip in Israel on the Mediterranean Sea. What was interesting about the Philistines, and I'm sure you know the story, they had a champion who actually was their general, and they viewed as God. I'll explain why in a second. Man called Goliath, we say. He was 2 meters tall. And in those days, the tradition was that the two armies, any two armies, occupied two opposite hills. And in the valley between them, two champions were sent, one from each army. And whoever won, the army of the losing champion surrendered. Okay, that was tradition, that was normal in that part of the world. This man, Goliath, 2 meters tall and so forth, had never lost a contest, and in battle had never been wounded. And I've read a little Philistine history. They saw him as God, never been wounded. He had been a general, the leading general in the Philistine army for 25 years. He trained most of the Philistine army in soldiering, in fighting. And of course he had on the usual armor, helmet, huge sword, dagger, and so forth. And he was standing there in the valley, shouting, and this was King Saul, Saul, send your best soldier to me, and I will cut him into so many pieces there are not enough dogs on this planet to eat them. Not one soldier, not even the most seasoned general in the Israelite army was willing to go down. Everybody was so afraid. In those days, there was a family. Father was Jesse, and there were some sons. They were officers in the Israelite army. The youngest son, who was called David, brought food to them. This is the middle of the day, food and wine as refreshment. And as he was approaching his brothers, he heard this man Goliath in this booming voice say, "You know, Saul, I am convinced that you have no God. I've heard that you have this so-called living God. There is no such thing. We have gods at home in Gath," that's his city. "They're made of wood or gold or whatever. Where is your God? I hear about this God. He's nothing. He's garbage." David heard this. David had a special relationship with God. He talked with God all the time. God said to him, "Listen, David, you want to go down there? Fight this man?" David said, "Absolutely." David said to King Saul, "I will fight Goliath." King Saul said, "Listen to me, sit down a second. You're 15 years old, you're a shepherd, you've never killed anybody in your life." David said, "I have a catapult, a slingshot it's called in the United States, catapult in England. You have a stone, you put it in a little leather pouch, two leather strings, you swing it around your head a couple of times, let go, and it kills, in his case, a bear or a wolf to protect his sheep."
Okay, excuse me, Brother George.
Oh, time flies. Okay, we'll continue next week.
Okay.
I think you know the story though. Again, God bless everybody, and thank you very much, sister.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, daghang kayong salamat sa atong igsoon Brother George sa maon niyang mensahe o mga kapitulo ug bersikulo nga iyang gibuhian mga kaigsuonan. Unya sa iya pong nasaksihan sa among panimbahon diha sa bara nga nakita niya ang mga tinud-anay nga kasing-kasing nga naglingkod sa simbahan mga kaigsuonan. Iyang gisaysay walay cross nga iyang nakita kundi ang hulagway lamang sa among halangdong Santo Papa Ministro Paulino Ungkoy Agapay. Unya mostly nga iyang nakita mga kaigsunan, puro mga kababayenan ang iyang nakita didto. Mao na iyang saysay sa iyang mensahe karon mga igsoon. Unya dugang paniana katong naa sa Deuteronomio 30 bersikulo 11, 12, 13 ang sugo ug balaod sa atong Ginoo wala sa layo, wala sa dili natabukon sa dagat kun dili naa lamang sa atong kasing-kasing mga kaigsuonan ang pagtuman niini. Mao kadto mga kaigsuonan no, hinaot na kapamupupod mo ato gamayng pagtulunan sa iyang hataas nga mensahe. Dili gamay mga kaigsuonan kun dili dako-dakoon gyud ninyo ang inyong mga nakatunan sa iyang mensahe. Okay mga igsoon, atong ihatag ang tubag sa atong pangutana. Mabasa to siya sa Deuteronomio 30 bersikulo 11, 12 ug 13. Unya ang nakatubag sa insaktong tubag mao ni si Annabel Ocom sa Manukan sa Norte, then si Grace Abing sa Rojas ug si Wilginda Bukayaw sa Santa Isabel, Dipolog City. Hangtod sunod higayon pohon kini inyo igsoon Sister Zelona Mugawa Arocha magaingon kaninyo dalay gud ang Dios ug ang tanan magaingon. Amen.